Did Steph Curry really let his marriage become the internet's favorite comedy show? Fans think so, and they're convinced it's no accident. After years of Ayesha Curry's oversharing interviews, viral clips, and jaw-dropping confessions, people are starting to wonder, does Steph secretly like the humiliation? Or has his wife simply turned their marriage into her personal spotlight? From TV stunts to podcast confessions, this story's got everything: jealousy, fame, and public embarrassment. And by the end of this, you'll see why fans are calling her the new Jada Pinkett-Smith. Let's start with what people are calling the Steph Curry Humiliation Theory. Over the years, fans have noticed something strange. Every time Ayesha Curry says or does something that would embarrass most husbands, Steph just smiles. No frustration, no reaction, just calm acceptance that leaves everyone confused. But here's where it starts to get deeper. This isn't a one-time slip-up either. It's a pattern that's repeated again and again. Ayesha overshares, the internet explodes, and Steph steps in to defend her. He praises her instead of checking her, and what should have been a short-lived, awkward moment turns into a viral headline. And when you see how often it happens, it starts to look intentional. People online began calling it the humiliation ritual. It's like a never-ending cycle. She crosses a line, fans clown him, he shrugs it off, and then it happens all over again. After a while, forgiveness stops looking like grace and starts looking like something else entirely. Because let's be honest, who smiles through humiliation this many times? Some fans say it's loyalty, others think it's submission. But lately, there's a third theory floating around that maybe, just maybe, Steph doesn't just tolerate the embarrassment, he might actually enjoy it. It sounds insane, but the internet's got receipts and they've been collecting them for years. And once you see them, it's hard to unsee. Whether it's faith, patience, or something more psychological, fans are convinced this dynamic runs deeper than people think. They say Steph's calmness isn't just restraint, it's a choice. Maybe it's emotional control, or maybe it's comfort in chaos. Either way, the man seems addicted to forgiving her. And that brings us to the clip that reignited everything. The moment that brought all this back to life was an old TV segment from The Real that resurfaced online, and it spread like wildfire. In the clip, Ayesha sits front row while a shirtless man walks onto the stage as part of a fun audience game. Instead of laughing it off, she casually slips off her wedding ring. No hesitation, no, I'm just joking. Just a bold, unfiltered moment that had the entire crowd screaming. And that's when fans realized this wasn't just harmless TV fun. Within hours, the video went viral. Steph Curry wasn't trending for his shooting streaks or another championship. He was trending because his wife was acting single on national television. The clip hit millions of views, and the comment sections filled up with disbelief. People couldn't wrap their heads around why a married woman would pull a stunt like that, especially someone whose brand had always been family first and faith-based. And the worst part? Steph didn't even flinch. He didn't call it out, didn't check her publicly, didn't even seem upset. Instead, he smiled through it like it didn't matter. And that's what triggered the conversation all over again, the humiliation cycle. Fans said every time Ayesha does something questionable, Steph lets it slide, reinforcing the pattern. They started to wonder if this was how their marriage really worked. She plays wild for attention, and he absorbs the fallout to protect her. But the internet wasn't done digging, because what came next only made it worse. People started rewatching the clip, analyzing her body language, the crowd's reaction, and the way she grinned as she took that ring off. It didn't look like a joke, it looked like a statement. That single gesture said more than words ever could. And when you've been married to one of the most respected men in sports, a move like that feels less like confidence and more like control. And that leads straight into her next scandal, the one she caused with her own podcast confession. Just when people thought the drama had died down, Ayesha reignited everything herself this time through her brand new podcast. In one episode, she opened up about her early years with Steph and dropped a bombshell that sent the internet spiraling. She admitted that she never wanted to get married or have kids. She said she planned to focus on her career and didn't even see Steph as that guy back then. It was raw, but not in the way people expected. It didn't sound like honesty. It sounded like regret. And that's where things took a turn, from awkward to disrespectful. Fans couldn't believe what they were hearing. This wasn't a random interview moment or a social media slip-up. It was a prepared podcast, her own platform, her own words. For someone who's built a public image around being the perfect wife and mother, saying she never wanted any of it felt like she was undoing everything she stood for. Viewers said it didn't come across as vulnerability. It came across as detachment, like she was distancing herself from the very life that made her famous. And that's when the narrative flipped completely. People started questioning whether Ayesha ever truly wanted to be with Steph in the first place. The way she told the story made it sound like she settled, not that she fell in love. She said she thought Steph would just be a high school basketball coach, not a superstar, not a legend, not the face of an entire franchise. It was almost as if she was saying she didn't sign up for the man he became. And while she might have meant it as casual honesty, the public didn't take it that way. Because let's be real, saying you didn't want the life your husband gave you doesn't sit well with anyone. The backlash was instant. Fans accused her of trying to rewrite history, of acting like she got trapped in a fairy tale she didn't want. Others said she was ungrateful, using Steph's name and fame for clout while painting herself as misunderstood. The irony? Her podcast episode wasn't supposed to be about him, yet somehow every headline afterward was. And once again, Steffi's name was trending, not for his game, but because of her words. And this is where the humiliation cycle came back into play. Ayesha said something controversial, the internet roasted her, and Steph said nothing but positive things. The same pattern, the same silence, the same smile. But this time, fans were starting to realize it wasn't just random oversharing, it was part of something much bigger. By now, people weren't shocked, they were used to it. Because this wasn't the first time Ayesha Curry had put her personal life in the spotlight. She's been oversharing for years, turning private frustrations into public confessions. From talk shows to interviews to her own social media posts, she's made their marriage a recurring topic. Each time she opens up, the internet explodes, not because she's relatable, but because her words always seem to cut just a little too deep. And every time, Steph's reaction stays exactly the same. He never calls her out, never draws a line, never even looks uncomfortable. Instead, he doubles down on being supportive, smiling, defending, praising. Fans started to see it as a loop. Ayesha overshares, people clown Steph, and he responds with nothing but grace. To outsiders, it looks sweet. But to the internet, it's a ritual, one where she takes the spotlight and he absorbs the damage. And the pattern didn't start recently, it's been building for years. Back in her interview with Jada Pinkett-Smith, Ayesha talked about how being married to a famous man made her feel invisible. She admitted she missed male attention and questioned whether something was wrong with her because other men didn't look at her anymore. It wasn't said maliciously, but the delivery was off. She wasn't just expressing vulnerability, she was expressing jealousy. Viewers said it sounded less like self-reflection and more like a cry for validation. And that's when people started realizing this wasn't about honesty, it was about attention. Every time she speaks publicly, she walks a fine line between authenticity and self-promotion. She'll share something shocking, then claim it's just her being real. But the pattern is too consistent to ignore. Each confession brings headlines, outrage, and renewed visibility. She's mastered the cycle of controversy. Whether intentional or not, every overshare keeps her name trending alongside Steph's. And that's exactly what keeps the public talking. And the more she speaks, the more fans believe this is all about one thing: jealousy. At this point, fans started piecing together what might really be driving Ayesha's behavior: jealousy. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies, but the quiet, subtle kind that shows up when someone feels overshadowed. Steph's career has only gone up, record-breaking games, endless praise, and a reputation as one of the most loved players in NBA history. Meanwhile, Ayesha's identity as Steph's wife began to eclipse everything she built on her own. And that's when the cracks in her confidence started to show. She had her own cooking shows, endorsements, and books, but none of it ever reached the level of attention Steph commanded just by stepping onto a court. To the public, he's the superstar, she's the plus one. And no matter how much she tries to shine individually, the spotlight always ends up reflecting back onto him. Fans began noticing that every time Steph's success peaked, Ayesha would say something online or on air that brought the attention back to her. And that's when people realized this might not be a coincidence anymore. The tone of her comments changed too. Instead of celebrating his achievements, she'd talk about what she was feeling, overlooked, invisible, or underappreciated. It wasn't about basketball or fame anymore, it was about validation. She didn't want to be just a wife, she wanted to be a star in her own right. But the more she tried to stand out, the more backlash she faced, and the cycle of resentment and attention-seeking kept repeating. And that's what made her next moves even harder to ignore. Fans started describing it as a quiet competition, not for love, but for visibility. They noticed she often acts outright when the world is praising Steph the loudest, almost as if she needs to remind everyone she's still there too. Some even said she behaves this way because Steph doesn't give her the kind of chaos she craves. He's loyal, calm, private, the complete opposite of the bad boy energy that tends to attract social media attention. And that's what turned the internet's curiosity into criticism, because people saw a pattern forming that wasn't just about marriage anymore, it was about ego. In the eyes of the public, Ayesha stopped looking like a misunderstood wife and started looking like someone who couldn't stand living in her husband's shadow. And while Steph keeps smiling through it all, fans are starting to wonder, how long can that smile last before it finally cracks? Because what started as love now feels like a silent power struggle, and the internet is watching every move. As the interviews and clips kept piling up, the internet's patience finally ran out. What started as playful teasing toward Ayesha slowly turned into open backlash. Comment sections under her posts were filled with criticism, calling her out for constantly embarrassing her husband for attention. It wasn't just trolls anymore, even longtime fans began saying she was going too far. And that's when the public perception really started to shift. One viral comment summed up the mood perfectly. If women looked at Steph the way they look at Chris Brown or Stephon Diggs, she wouldn't keep playing in that man's face. It was harsh, but it struck a nerve. Viewers started seeing a painful truth. Ayesha's behavior might not come from confidence, but from insecurity. The idea that she acts out because no one's chasing Steph made sense to people. He's loyal, private, low-key. There's no chaos, no groupies, no scandals, and ironically, that peace seems to make her restless. And when peace feels boring, drama becomes the only way to feel noticed. The internet started drawing patterns between her outbursts and the timing of Steph's major accomplishments. When he wins, she posts something controversial. When he trends for basketball, she trends for something personal. People began accusing her of competing with him for attention, of needing the spotlight more than stability. And once that idea caught on, the internet never let it go. Over time, every move she made was analyzed, every quote picked apart. Her image as the wholesome, family-first wife was gone. Now she was being called thirsty, attention-hungry, and the Jada Pinkett of basketball. What hurt most was that the narrative didn't just damage her, it started to damage him too. Fans who used to praise their marriage as relationship goals now said Steph looked weak for allowing it to continue. And that's when people started drawing dangerous comparisons, ones that would change how the world saw both of them. Once Ayesha's podcast comments went viral, people online started connecting the dots and the comparison came almost instantly. They began calling her the new Jada Pinkett-Smith. The parallels were uncanny. Just like Jada, Ayesha was oversharing deeply personal details about her marriage. Just like Jada, she was making her husband the center of uncomfortable conversations. And just like Jada, she didn't seem to realize how much public damage those words were causing. And once that nickname stuck, the internet never looked at her the same way again. Fans began replaying Jada's most infamous moments, from the Red Table Talk episodes to her shocking confession about her entanglement with August Alsina, and comparing them to Ayesha's own interviews. Both women had publicly admitted to emotional dissatisfaction. Both had husbands who stood by them in silence, smiling through humiliation. The comparison wasn't just convenient, it was brutally accurate. and it made people wonder if Ayesha was consciously following the same playbook. The similarities kept stacking up. Jada once said she cried on her wedding day and never wanted to marry Will. Ayesha echoed that sentiment when she said she didn't want to marry or have kids, that it just happened. Both statements hit the internet the same way, as emotional gut punches to men who had done nothing but support them publicly. Fans were stunned that two of Hollywood and sports' most admired husbands were being humiliated by their wives in such eerily similar ways. And yet, in both cases, the men did the same thing. They smiled through it. The internet started calling it the Will Smith effect. When a husband stays silent while his wife constantly crosses lines, people stop seeing him as strong. They start seeing him as powerless. And in Steph's case, that was heartbreaking to watch. He'd built a career on discipline, respect, and calm leadership. But now, every time Ayesha made headlines, his image took another hit. And that's when fans started to ask the question no one wanted to say out loud: does he secretly need this kind of chaos? The Jada comparison wasn't just about the women, it was about the men who endured the public humiliation and never fought back. To fans, Steph was starting to look like Will 2.0, another good man trapped in a marriage where silence looked more like suffering than support. And that brings us to the next part, because Steph's silence has now become its own mystery. Through every viral clip, every headline, every overshare, Steph Curry's reaction has been the same: silence and a smile. He doesn't argue, doesn't clap back, doesn't even look fazed. Instead, he praises Ayesha, calls her strong, and tells the world to respect his wife. To some, that's maturity, but to others, it's something darker, a sign that he's emotionally checked out or maybe even enjoys the chaos. And that's where the theory starts to twist into something way more psychological. Because if it were just once or twice, people could brush it off. But Steph's pattern is too consistent. No matter what she says, how wild the headlines get, or how embarrassing the situation seems, he always reacts the same. Fans began to wonder if his calmness wasn't strength, but submission. It's like he's addicted to forgiveness, trapped in a loop where every act of disrespect just becomes another chance to prove how unbothered he is. And the internet started to notice that this calm was starting to look like weakness. There's also the question of image. Steph has spent years cultivating his reputation as the clean-cut family man of the NBA, the devoted husband, the doting father, the golden boy who never gets caught up in scandals. Maybe he stays silent because breaking that image would mean breaking character. To him, public conflict might feel worse than public humiliation. But to everyone watching, it just looks like he's letting his wife chip away at his dignity one interview at a time. And when silence starts to look like surrender, the respect starts to fade. Fans online are divided. Some say he's protecting his peace, that he's a man of faith refusing to feed negativity. Others argue he's been emotionally conditioned to accept embarrassment as normal. The idea that a man could have all the power, fame, and love in the world, yet allow himself to become the punchline, fascinates people. And that's how the Humiliation Kink rumor was born. It's not about the physical, it's about the emotional, the power dynamic, the way he smiles through being disrespected as if it comforts him somehow. And that theory, whether true or not, is what's now defining how people see him. Every time Ayesha trends, so does he, but not for the reasons he should. The once revered MVP is now part of an ongoing internet joke, and no matter how much he ignores it, the laughter only gets louder. And that's what makes the next part so painful, because what's at stake now isn't just his image, it's his legacy. Steph Curry's love for Ayesha has never been in question. That's the one thing everyone agrees on. You can see it in every photo, every interview, every moment he publicly supports her, no matter what she says. He's loyal to his core. But there's a fine line between loyalty and losing yourself. Because when love stops being mutual respect and turns into blind defense, it stops being strength and becomes sacrifice. And that's exactly what fans believe Steph is doing, sacrificing himself for love. Each time Ayesha makes headlines for something controversial, Steph takes the hit with her. Instead of letting her face the backlash, he absorbs it. Instead of setting boundaries, He keeps forgiving. To outsiders, it looks noble. But the more it happens, the more people see a man who's slowly letting go of his own dignity to protect someone else's image. And that's when love stops looking romantic and starts looking painful. You can tell he wants to believe the best in her. Maybe he thinks if he keeps defending her, the internet will stop attacking her. But it's had the opposite effect. Every time he stays quiet, the conversation grows louder. Every time he smiles, people mock him more. His kindness, the same quality that made him one of the most respected players in basketball, is now being mistaken for weakness. And once the public decides a man has no backbone, that label sticks. Fans are starting to worry that his silence isn't just about peace, it's about fear. Fear of losing control, fear of confrontation, or fear of damaging his perfect husband image. But love built on fear or image management isn't healthy. You can't protect someone by constantly letting them hurt you in public, because at some point forgiveness stops healing and starts enabling. And that's exactly what people think is happening to him now. It's hard to watch because you can tell Steph still adores her. But even the strongest love can't survive without respect on both sides. When one person keeps crossing lines and the other keeps pretending it's fine, the relationship doesn't grow, it erodes. And that erosion doesn't just affect their marriage, it's starting to stain his legacy. And that brings us to the final piece, because what's being destroyed here isn't just a marriage image, it's a legend's reputation. At this point, the conversation isn't just about marriage drama, it's about legacy. Steph Curry has built one of the cleanest, most respected reputations in all of sports. He's a 4-time NBA champion, a 2-time MVP, and the face of loyalty both on and off the court. But lately, his public image has been tied less to his accomplishments and more to Ayesha's controversial moments. Every time she says something wild, it trends higher than his highlights. And that's when fans started realizing the internet doesn't separate their names anymore. Steph isn't being talked about as a basketball icon right now. He's being talked about as the husband who lets his wife embarrass him. That label has stuck, and it's growing. The same fans who once saw him as the perfect family man are now turning his relationship into a punchline. The memes, the edits, the jokes, they're all chipping away at a man who's spent years staying out of scandal. And the more he ignores it, the more people define him by it. Some fans are even saying if Ayesha keeps this up, she could rewrite his legacy without even meaning to. They're calling it the humiliation era. Not because Steph deserves it, but because he refuses to fight it. In trying to protect his wife, he's let the world mock the image he worked decades to build. It's a tragic irony. The man who inspired millions by staying humble might end up remembered for staying silent. And silence, no matter how peaceful it looks, can sometimes cost everything. If this pattern continues, the humiliation kink rumor won't just be an internet joke. It'll become a permanent part of his story. And when the laughter fades, what'll be left is a question no trophy can answer. How much can a man take before love turns into loss? And that question leads right into the heartbreaking truth behind it all. Steph Curry's life was once the definition of balance. Faith, family, and basketball all moving in perfect rhythm. But now that balance feels broken. Ayesha's need for validation and Steph's refusal to set boundaries have turned their marriage into a public spectacle. What used to be admired is now analyzed. What used to look like strength now looks like silence. Maybe he stays quiet out of love. Maybe he believes forgiveness will fix everything. But the reality is, silence doesn't heal disrespect. And every time he lets her turn their marriage into entertainment, another piece of his legacy fades into the noise. In the end, Steph doesn't need to prove he loves his wife. Everyone knows he does. What he needs is to remember the one thing that built his greatness in the first place: self-respect. Because no matter how many championships he wins, if this cycle keeps repeating, the world won't remember the legend who changed basketball. They'll remember the man who smiled through humiliation. And that's the tragedy no amount of trophies can erase.